for the next hour in the programme. We welcome our two guests to review the day. They are author DJ Connell and also contributing editor, New Internationalist magazine, Jamie Kelsey-Fryand. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for coming in live on the programme tonight.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
We know that... I certainly knew that you were arriving here, DJ, because as always you put your photograph on Twitter.
That's right.
Of Regent Street, but is it still Regent Street there? Yeah, it's Regent Street. Upper Regent Street, I think they call that bit.
Is it, I'm not sure. I just think of it as, I just say Oxford Circus, and I'm in the general area.
Well, you take a picture of yourself, a selfie?
I don't take myself.
No, she takes a picture of the street.
Oh, I see.
It always looks wonderful.
I thought the buses looked very shiny in my photo today.
I thought that. I thought the buildings looked shiny. I thought it was a very clear night.
Different phone, new iPhone. Everything looking a little bit better.
Looking better.
Everything looking...
Gosh, I would just about to say some places in London you could go that would, but I won't because that's just going to upset people. Jamie, welcome. We were also talking earlier on about... before we came on air, what you would do, because I'm fascinated with the two of you. Very, very different lives. I'm not quite sure how far your politics actually depart from each other, but certainly very different lives you lead. 109 million on the lottery. What would you do?
I would... to me, that would be a fantastic opportunity to get a dream team together of creatives, subversives, artistic people who think outside the box, want to break the paradigm, set up an office and basically run, a huge... campaign for the next 3 years using the same techniques that these huge PR companies use, like Bell Pottinger, for example. But usually these techniques are used to sell a political idea or sell a car, and instead we'd use all this brilliance to encourage people to think outside of the box, to actually break through the kind of current economic and political system and develop something that's far more equality, something that approaches democracy in a much more genuine way. So it will be a campaign, basically. I'd spend my money on that, Simon.
And would it be encouraging people to do it within the law?
Well,
we
got to that in about 20 seconds. That's amazing. Civil disobedience has made some of the greatest changes in the human species, so I never rule that out. But people generally they think, civil disobedience, running down the street, breaking a window. They forget about some of the amazing things the suffragettes did. Do you know the suffragettes posted themselves to number 10 Downing Street? Did you guys know that?
I didn't know that.
So there's one of the aspects...
That's a very clever idea.
Yeah, because they found out there was a law that meant that as long as there's enough postage on it, by law it's got to go over the threshold. So two women put themselves in a box.
Is that still the law?
They might have changed it quickly after this incident.
They may change it tonight.
But if you go to the Post Office Museum, which is actually genuinely really interesting up near Mount Pleasant, you can find the letter from the butler of the Prime Minister at the time, and he's going, "It was a very difficult situation. I asked the parcel if it could actually just leave, and the parcel said, no, by the law you have to carry me over." And so creative civil disobedience is brilliant.
There's one for the next book, I think, DJ.
There you go. Yes, very good. Great idea.
What would you do with 109? 109 big ones, 109 million big ones.
May I just say that I think it's 107.9 million.
I'm giving you 109.
Okay, that extra mil will come in handy. I think for me, I would keep it very quiet for a start.
Yeah, don't tell us so.
Before, it would be very difficult not to tell my mother. Then she'd tell everybody, actually. But
there's no one in your life that wouldn't tell everybody. There is no one. You have to give them everything you might think they want, but don't tell them how you got the money.
Muzzle them. I think what would happen is I'd have to be very careful because I'm fine about I live a very simple life. We both catch the C2. I'm not a flashy person. I'm not
if I'm feeling really slumming it, I'll get the 88.
Oh, very nice.
Let's go wild.
I see. Well, I think this guy here is going to buy a fleet of supercars, so I won't be doing that because I think that public transport is good. However, I would very quietly have a big think about what to do with that money because and give money to people like Jamie who would act for the best interests of the society at large. And I just about your idea about civil disobedience, I absolutely agree, but changes don't happen when people, rich people are not going to, or I'm not saying rich people are bad, but people who have power and are not sharing their wealth with other people, they're not going to give up their wealth, and they're not going to give up the structure that supports them and oppresses others if it's to their benefit. That's why, when things are out of kilter, when you've got, what is it the 5 families own more.
We're going to come to that indeed a bit later.
It's incredible.
Just before we do, though, I just want to check with both of you. Are you absolutely convinced that were you to get that kind of money, you would not become incredibly separated from the rest of the world? It wouldn't take very long for your brain to work overtime and think, hello,
yes.
I am now one of them and I'm not one of you.
I think that's true. In fact, one of my brothers, we were brought up in a Labour voting family. Oops, yeah, that's true. And a working class family. Dad had a small business, but one of my brothers became very wealthy. Well, actually, they've all kind of got quite wealthy, but the wealthiest one, and his politics changed and became, the New Zealand equivalent to Tory. Right. And he's we all think, what the hell happened to him? He was one of us, and now he's not. He's rich. He's got a helicopter. And goodness knows what.
It does. Yeah, it's hard for it not to. I have no knowledge of what it's like to be rich in any way whatsoever, but I can imagine. I've seen it happen to people, and it does very much change you, because also the way other people treat you, that makes it very difficult. I know the son of a very, very famous musician, one of the most famous musicians in the country, right? And everyone treats him completely normally, and then they find out who his dad is.
I know who this is, but I'm not going to guess who it is. I'll tell you off air. Let me tell you now who it is. No. Oh, it's not his. Now you're back on it. Don't tell me. Okay, got that wrong.
But people treat him completely normally. He's a totally lovely geezer, right? But then as soon as they find out who his dad is, they're going, "Oh, you're brilliant! Oh, come round my house." And it's just like completely. That's
what they say to Mel. They treat Mel like dirt, but when they find out he works with me, they're like, "Wow!" Listen, let's get straight underway. And towards the end of the hour, I'm going to ask you about the £1 coin. It is going to be scrapped. It's going to be replaced in 2017 by a new version, which is going to be shaped, if you remember this, like the old threepenny bit. There's a picture in some of the papers. We'll try and put it up on Twitter a bit later. It's 12-sided, it's going to be. Yeah. We'll get some of your reaction on that a bit later on. Right, before we get any further, let's start, DJ, with one of the very, very passionately debated subjects we started off with in the programme tonight. This is this childcare subsidy for working parents. It's going to be increased to £2,000. 1.9 million working families may get it, £2,000 per child. Logically, you think this is helping people. No one's going to have a word to say against it, but many people have.
Because there's something interesting in it too. It says, when it was originally announced a year ago, the government said the minimum support available would be £1,200 per pound, and that it would be open to families where both parents work and earn less than £150,000 a year. That is the benchmark for whether... I'm sorry, I think that subsidies like this, really... People that earn £150,000, there are people that could do why not have a bigger subsidy for very poor families? And, £5 for the people that earn £150,000. People are going to hate me for that, but why not?
A lot of people are going to completely agree with you.
Why not a sliding scale? And that would be my problem. Also in France, where I lived for many years, 9 years, I know that they have a lot of subsidies for childcare, but they've been accused of creating a subclass of nannies, women who work, because they have them in the home, these au pairs and nannies and things. And there's some criticism of that, of creating women that just do, basically, it is a skilled job, but what's perceived as an unskilled job, and it's lowly, the pay isn't very good. So it's a tricky situation. Actually, a child is best with his or her parents, I think, personally.
And even if there is a lesson to be learnt by children, that life is not always like that. It isn't possible. It's a wonderful thought that could be possible, but it isn't. And particularly the way the world is, you can blame it on the fact that both parents go out to work, that the cost of things have increased. You could also say that's just life, that things have increased and life has got a lot tougher.
Yeah, okay. So
it's a bit like, why did anybody ever think of having children during war? They did, because that's life.
Yes, okay, and I agree with that. So, okay, if we're going to accept that families decide to have children and then the government does give them some money towards it, childcare, then surely it should go towards families who really need it. That would be what I'd have to say.
Jamie?
Well, it's doing nothing to close the enormous gap between the people who are living on a very low income or living on benefits. It's not addressing the fact that there's a huge gap between the super rich and the super poor in this country. I would rather, and also this is just a trick to. It's all about votes. It's all leading up to the election as usual. This has nothing to do with the reality of what the country needs. It's a bunch of young people who have been paid to sit in a room and go, right, what can we come up with that will really get them on our side? It's nothing to do with reality. What you want is a government who says, vote for us and we'll end tax evasion, we'll end tax dodging, we'll actually bring all these billions that are owed to the country back into the country. That will make a difference to this country. But what's happening is decisions are being made by almost ad agencies who are saying, well, the research shows that this will be a really good thing to announce, and I think we should announce it at this time, and that will win votes. Nothing to do with reality.
But that is the fault of the population, not the fault of government, isn't it?
For the population for the fact that they voted this government in the first place? Or?
No, that they vote any government in based on what they believe will be better for themselves. That's how life is.
Well, there's the line. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So that's our fault. It's a bit like don't complain that supermarkets sell buy one get one free or give. We're buying. It's our fault. It's all our fault because we are driven by the way that we're sold to.
Well, we were chatting a bit about this before, DJ. There are a lot of people out there who don't think like that, Tom. There's a lot of people out there who are going, unless we do something very quickly, radically, we're creating the most disgraceful future for our children. So a lot of people are going, this is more important. We ought to start working together to create a sustainable, fair, equal future for our children.
But presumably not enough people share your view.
I'm getting less and less lonely as time goes on. I'm telling you that, buddy.
But there is a point here because we get the electors, we elect the politicians we elect. We get the politicians we deserve, some say. And that is because we believe certain things. We consistently believe the same things. Sometimes they don't become the truth. But we always vote in the same way. We vote in the way that we believe will make us and our families better off because the bigger picture is simply too difficult to imagine.
Well, that's what's interesting about the times that we're living in now, because I think people are beginning to entertain the bigger picture. I also think that there's a whole load of other plays in this game. For example, the last 7 governments that have been voted in, maybe it's coincidentally, but they were the ones that the biggest media empire run by a media emperor who's very well known, they were the government that he'd chosen. So really, are we making our own mind up or are we having our minds made up for us?
Well, that could work in both ways, couldn't it? Because in most cases, newspapers know exactly what people are thinking.
OK, so it's chicken and egg. But I think... the way, if you look at the way, what's called the manipulation of the mass consensus by using mainstream media, it's a pretty developed, sophisticated skill now. I mean, it was...
Do you want not to have a free press?
What I would like to have is a release, a stop of the ability for individuals to have a monopoly over so much kind of media. That's just terrifying to think of.
We did, and I'm so sorry because this is leaving DJ out of this. I don't want to just have a debate between the two of us, but we did have those very strict rules. But without the money, newspapers die and cannot afford to work on the basic basis. Same with radio, commercial radio. There were probably hundreds of companies who ran radio in the UK. Now there's probably about 3 or 4.
Sure, that's the problem. But what I'm describing is the situation we're in, and it would be great to find a solution to that, to be honest.
81333, start your message with the word London, 0207 2240. There's interesting points from both of you on this. Childcare subsidy of working parents to be increased. And more on that, I'm sure, to come, and certainly more possibly tomorrow night when we find out exactly what is said regarding that in the budget. Jamie, can we talk about this teenager, very, very popular teenager, I'm sure, amongst his fellow colleagues in the classroom. Tell us what he's done and tell us what happened to him.
Okay, it was in the Mirror I found this, so it's a great story.
Interesting story, yeah.
Yeah, if you bear in mind, I was a teacher for about 25 years, a secondary school teacher. So
I'd love to have had you as a teacher, I must say. Remind us of your subject.
Sorry?
Remind us of your subject.
I started English and drama, then I moved into special educational needs, and then ended up with citizenship. Yeah, I had a great time. It was a brilliant job. So this young guy, he is in a school that he's unsatisfied with it. So much so that he had 100-strong protest where the teenagers walked out of school. Why did he do that? Because he was so furious that they weren't being given enough homework. Now, I love this story because we're a very ephebophobic nation. And of course, all of your listeners and you two know exactly what that word means.
Indeed, but there's one or two that don't. So
the fear and loathing of teenagers. Ephebophobia is the fear and loathing of teenagers. So, in very, very, by far the majority of stories that you read about with teenagers,
you must have a bit of that. We all have a bit of that.
No, because I know them really well. You know, and I know that. I mean, I've worked with teenagers for so long. I don't have any fear or loathing of teenagers. I could
have done with me the other night. I'll tell you why. Some point later. I did mention it on the programme before. Go on. Yeah.
All right. So I like this story because this is not an ephebophobic story. Generally, teenagers are depicted as running around in hoods, doing drugs and carrying knives and just being losers. You know, and it's fantastic to get a story that's actually this positive. This is a young person who's going, I really want to engage with my future. I know my exams are really important. I'm not getting enough homework. I'd like my school to address it. I've asked them to address it. I've gone through all the normal processes. They're not listening to me, so I'm taking direct action. And he was actually just going to do it with a handful of mates, but you know, it ended up with 100 of them coming out with him. But I'm wondering how many of the 100 were actually behind him, and they're just going, "Oh, this is a laugh. Let's bunk off maths." Yeah.
And it's interesting because often people think the same about some of the other direct action protests in the country too. TJ, what do you make
Why
of this
did I
story?
dig that hole?
Remarkable story. 14 years old, 100 kids go out because he didn't have enough homework.
I think what he did was good because he did try. He did write to people like Ofsted. He did write to the council. I think he did try to get the attention and say that he wasn't getting a proper education. I have a funny feeling about this though, because there's a thing about. I mean, there's some. Perhaps I'm a bit old-fashioned, but there's a part of me thinks, in a way. Like, I do think, obviously, he wasn't getting a good education because what he was protesting was that. But there's something about me, and I can see Jamie's probably not going to like this, but there's something about young people, I feel, in a way, it doesn't serve them well if they feel they can always go out, challenge authority like education and other... Not completely, but it's just this thing of I remember being at school, and I remember a girl at my class, and she used to get up and stand on the table and shout at the teacher because her father was a professor at our school, and she felt entitled to do that and I used to think she was only doing that because she could, but all she was doing is disrupting the class, and it wasn't doing her any good, and it certainly wasn't doing our education any good. So there needs to be some balance between children taking the law into their own hands and actually education services providing them with the education that they deserve. So I was in two minds when I read that. Part of me thought, well, he could be a little punk, but then another part of me thought, well, he did try the proper channels first.
Yeah.
So.
Jamie, there's a point there, isn't there, to be had?
Absolutely. Well, there's a couple of points here, but a little punk would, although I'd never call a kid a little punk, but a child who kind of has the kind of behaviour of that student you were talking about, who would stand on the table and just shout at the teacher, they'd never have written to Ofsted and written to the council and gone through those avenues. He's actually approaching it in a very sort of mature way. And the parallels with direct action and civil disobedience are very interesting with this, because he feels that the system that he's working within is not satisfying him. He's gone down the democratic routes that are on offer to him, and they failed him, so he has taken direct action. And I'm telling you now, he's going to get homework offered to him for the rest of his time in that school, and he really has shaken them up. But, you know...
Did you mention the Ofsted report? Previously, that they had found that the standards were very low.
Yes,
and there was too much mediocre teaching, and in a sense, what they said is backed up by him.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that really stick out, because if you see it from a young person's point of view, one of the things that's a real problem with a school where there's no regular teachers, they have supply teachers who just come in for a term or something, that drives you bananas. As a young person, you've got to develop a relationship with teachers. If the teacher just changes on a regular basis, there's nothing consistent. You're not going to get homework set for you because the teacher who's going to set the homework is probably not going to be around to mark it. So it's just very quickly you go, hold on, this is just taking the mickey. This is rubbish, because I'm in a situation now where I'm actually got no consistent learning. What chance do I have?
Does this sense of entitlement that DJ refers to, and I think many parents and certainly teachers can appreciate what exactly that means and can probably imagine a moment when they've experienced that sense of entitlement. Does there something need to be done about a sense of entitlement? There is certainly more of a sense of importance and right than there ever was when I was going through school. We did know there was a limit to our behaviour, and at that limit we stopped.
Yeah, that's right. But you do have this attitude now where it's this very strong sense of entitlement, and you're a service provider as a teacher, which is quite extraordinary, you know. And I had that from young people. They're going, well, I expect this of you, and I know you're not allowed to do this. And yeah, look, it depends on how they're kind of expressing it, but you know, there's a lot of young people who are really serious. They're realising to get on in life, it's going to be really, really difficult for me, you know. And if you respect that and you provide the kind of consistent care that they need and attention duly, then they react brilliantly to it. That's all it is. If you have a good relationship with a teenager and they say, name one thing that makes a teacher great, they'll tell you the truth. They'll all say the same, and it's a teacher that genuinely cares. And what's very important is the word genuinely. Because there's loads of teachers who, you know, they kind of talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. But if you actually have personal care and attention to different individual students, and you genuinely following what they're doing and care about it, they flourish. But it's getting harder and harder. The kind of pressures on your average secondary school teacher today is just extraordinary.
In Britain, do you have that thing where you can rate your teacher on the internet? They have that in the States, and they also have it. A friend of mine in New Zealand, who's a teacher, she got rated by some brat of a student, and it was awful on the internet. You can't get it taken off.
That's I've read about that in other countries, but they should have that here.
It's like TripAdvisor,
as long as it's moderated. Yeah, but that'd be brilliant, because as long as it's moderated correctly and there's no abusive kind of stuff that's happening, I think that should go out there, purely because people don't realise what's going on in some of those classrooms. There are geniuses in those classrooms. I'm working with a teacher in Newham at the moment, in a free school in Newham. He's a genius. What he changes kids' lives, and he's been doing it I've worked with him on and off for about 10 years. So he's a drama teacher, and he's worked in some of the hardest schools with me in London, and he literally can turn around young people's lives, young people who are going through nightmarish lives. And I would like there to be this sort of TripAdvisors for teachers.
Would you approve of the idea of lessons being filmed and that could be randomly downloaded by parents so they can see exactly what their children are being taught and the environment that they're being taught in?
That's a really interesting question. It's open to abuse, but if there was a total moderated way of it not being abused, then yeah, same thing. I think that it'd be interesting for teachers, parents to see what's happening in the classroom. Because I'll tell you now, parents' evenings, you have the parents and the young person, and you're saying to the parents, well, Fred is not going to get anywhere because he's totally disruptive. And they're going, our Fred, that angel, what are you talking about? And at times like that, you do want to go, oh, man, I'd just like to have seen a film of what he did on Tuesday, you know. So it'd have its uses, but of course you have to be careful of it.
11:30, Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. DJ Connell and Jamie Kelsey-Fryand review the day. More of your calls, emails and texts to come. Lots of other subjects to get our teeth into over the next 30 minutes. Before that, though, Valley Fontaine has the headlines.
Thanks, Simon. Speaking to BBC London 94.9, the Prime Minister has defended his new package of childcare help available to couples earning as much as £300,000 a year. Families with both parents in work will be able to claim up to £2,000 every year, which would be available for each child up to the age of 12. The Prime Minister denied measures would make it easier for childcare providers to increase their fees. Ukraine has accused Russia of war crimes after claiming that a Ukrainian soldier had been shot dead in the Crimean capital. The serviceman is reported to have been killed when Russian troops stormed a military base. An accountant from Somerset has been charged with fraud to the value of nearly £2 million after cash was stolen from a residential property company based in New Bond Street. Westminster Magistrates Court heard 47-year-old Miriam Clark stole the money over a period of 3 years from 2010 to 2013. And Chelsea reached the Champions League quarter-finals with a 3-1 aggregate win over Galatasaray at Stamford Bridge. And the Championship Queen's Park Rangers were beaten 3-0 at Sheffield Wednesday, and Charlton are out of the relegation places after 1-0 win at home over Bournemouth. And London's weather will be dry but breezy night with a low of 6 degrees Celsius, that's 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow it will stay dry with plenty of sunshine with a high of 18 degrees Celsius, that's 64 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the headlines. There'll be a full update at midnight.
BBC London 94.9.
Next Tuesday, join me, Eddie Nestor, and the head of surface transport at Transport for London, Leon Daniels. He'll be answering your questions.
Unfortunately, when you look on there for the live update, it gives you an update from about 5 hours before.
I will get that fixed straight away.
So if you drive a cab or private hire or your own car through town,
dealing with vulnerable road users generally is a really high priority for me.
Put your questions to TFL TfL's Head of Surface Transport, Leon Daniels, on Drive Time with me, Eddie Nestor, next Tuesday from 5.
BBC London 94.9. Call 020 722 42000.
Text 81333. Start your message with the word London.
BBC London 94.9.
Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. Jane says, evening Simon, how can this coalition be so clueless? Child benefit and any allowances should be given to the first child only. More only encourages people to have children they can't afford, says Jane. This is Peter, who says, I was brought up in a family of 10 children. Attention was at a premium. Love was not. I had to be educated, interesting and funny to get noticed. These skills have helped me tremendously in life. I'm 49, not out, and I'm 49, not out. See, this is when the note lack of. I'm 49, not out. I'm assuming that's what you mean. Yeah. And my parents' nurture and love means I never feel alone or lost for very long, says Peter in Clapham. I will take a run at that another time. Thank you very much, Dee, for that. 81333. Start your message with the word London. 0207 224 2000. To review the day, we're in the company of DJ Connell and Jamie Kelsey-Fryand. Lots of stuff to get through in the next half hour. Plus, towards the end, we'll talk and we'll debate this in the last hour of the programme. The £1 coin is going to be scrapped. News just in, and it's going to be scrapped in favour of a replacement which has 12 sides, a little bit like the old threepenny bit. If you remember that, we'll get reaction on the £1 coin. Of course, in Scotland, you can still get the £1 note.
I've not seen it there. I go to Scotland every year.
Well, you need to ask for the £1 note in change. You can still get the £1 coin, but they also do a £1 note. Lovely. They're the only, oddly, despite this debate about sterling after they go, if indeed they go, they are still allowed to produce their own notes. So if you go to Scotland, that's why they have all different notes.
Yeah.
And one of the banks, and I think it's the Bank of Scotland, not the Royal Bank of Scotland, I think the Bank of Scotland still does £1 notes. They said, no, we're not going to stop doing £1 notes. So when I was up, and I think you still get them. Pretty convinced. If you're Scottish, let us know if you can still get £1 notes. I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah.
Right. First half hour, we talked about childcare subsidy and also this remarkable tale of a teenager who walked out of school because there was a lack of homework. He then got excluded, which meant he stayed out of school. Mum, of course, furious. We'll get more reaction on that. DJ, can we talk about saturated fat?
Well, I will talk about it, but it's like there's now evidence, according to some British Heart Foundation researchers, that swapping butter for sunflower spread may not lower heart risk. Actually, it's conflicting, the information that's in this, but it's what's come out. We've been told to cut down on saturated fats.
Yes.
They come from mostly animal sources, most of them really. And increase polyunsaturated fats such as sunflower spreads and plant oils and olive oils. But now they've found that they did a study and there wasn't much of a difference. And they said, but then on the other hand, the experts have stressed that it doesn't mean you can go out and eat lots of cheese, pies and cakes, which is a shame. It's an absolute shame. But the one thing they do agree is, trans fats. These are those really dirty
banned
fats.
In America, I think, trans fats, but yet we still have them allegedly banned in America. I'm pretty convinced that some form of saturated fat that we have here that is very happy to be sold is not allowed in goods in America.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. That rings a bell. Yeah.
But that one is, trans fats are positively and strongly associated with risk of heart diseases, and you can find them in most processed food, many processed food items and margarine spreads. So anyway, the one thing what should be discouraged too is refined carbohydrates and sugar and salt, because they're bad for your vascular health.
Yes, I was devastated in the week when I discovered that pasta is just a form of sugar.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
I had no idea. I seriously had no idea.
No, neither did I. But it breaks down into sugar. Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm being healthy because I'm having pasta and I'm having salad without salad cream. I never used to add salt or sugar to taste, and all this time I'm having something that is just as...
But you need a little fuel. You need
a bit,
it.
but I used to eat plates of the stuff.
It's addictive. You know when we did a sugar-free
pasta.
diet after Christmas, love of my life and myself, and my God, there's nothing left. I was eating tins of mackerel for weeks. Tins of mackerel.
Fish oil, very good.
Yeah.
Fine stuff for you.
And there's buckwheat pasta you can eat. That doesn't break down into sugar. Anyway, we worked out, so things like potatoes, obviously, and tomatoes, you can't do any of them. Do you know what? I'm telling you now, we did 3 weeks or something of a non-sugar, sugar-clear diet. And it was quite difficult. And
That
it was
is
a bit of a pain.
difficult. Presumably even natural sugar. I mean, did you avoid fruit?
Yeah, of course.
So what were you... What could you have with that?
All I remember is eating a lot of tins of mackerel, a lot of buckwheat. In fact, there's vegetables...
Mackerel surely has a high salt content.
That's just sugar we weren't dealing with. That salt's okay, yeah.
Okay, one at a time.
But I've got to say something. When we cleared out, after about 3 weeks doing it, my goodness, your brain works completely differently, and you realise sugar's a really thickening.
It does.
Thing that we're doing.
Fish is very good for the brain.
Fish
oil is excellent.
That
for
helps
the brain.
hugely.
But it'll be the carbohydrate and not eating sugars. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, it really affected us. It makes you think, well, how many of us just wandering around zombie-like because of our sugar diets?
But if you eat, because for years I did a macrobiotic diet, and I still eat a high grain vegetable-based diet. If you eat the grain itself, it's completely different than eating the refined flour. If you go out and you buy, use spelt flour, brown rice, it's a completely different thing to eat. It does give you fuel, it breaks down slowly, and it's got fibre that makes things work in your body better. So while I understand what you did, if you did the same thing and you just had really hard grains and you cook them well and you ate those with your vegetables and your mackerel, you'd probably find a very similar thing, because it doesn't give you the sugar rush.
Yeah, no, we had grains and seeds on all the food that we were eating as well. Yeah,
okay.
Loving my life. You're so impressed by me, aren't you? I sound like I know all about diets now.
Is she listening in?
I should be listening in, yeah.
Paul says, we were talking earlier on about the time scale here, and very disappointed. We have a number of listeners in America who get upset when when our summertime starts and their time ends. This is Paul who says, I'm on US mountain time in Alberta, and with this difference in when summertime starts, your show now starts, because I think recently something must have changed, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon instead of the usual 3. This means I can't listen to the whole show before I leave the office, and I'm forced to listen to my favourite callers in the final hour the next day on Listen Again. Can we get this sorted out? This is because this is the first texter was saying I should speak to the Prime Minister to try and make sure that we balance up nicely.
For Alberta.
That when we change, they change. It was interesting, actually, because, as you know, I went to your part of the world, New Zealand, and when we were on the ship, we missed a day because we passed the date line.
Yeah.
And life gets very confusing because no one actually knew for some time what day we were on. And there are occasions where even the clock doesn't change by an hour, it changes by half an hour. So it's not always, it's not GMT always +1, it can be by the half. And of course, as we know, with the situation in Crimea, very serious situation, and I'm not making a light of it at all, but as part of this change, Russia have said, well, now you have to be on our time, so their clocks will move forward 2 hours, I think, the next time they move. So time, politically, I mean, this is obviously quite light, so say you missed the last bit of the programme, listen again. I'm flattered you listened on Listen Again, actually, it's all good for the figures. But time politically, very, very important. If you have the time and if you control the time that everybody else is working, you have a tremendous amount of power. Think of all the other controls of time. Football matches, international football matches are pub opening hours, all controlled by major sporting events. We live our life by time.
We catch airplanes, we catch trains, we start work, we do everything. Yes,
have you ever lived a life where there's no watch, there's no time, you just live it by, I mean, I've got a friend who...
Eat when you eat, sleep when you're tired.
Yeah, he goes to sleep when it starts getting dark, which is actually what we're still adapted to. We haven't really adapted to this thing of false lights that go on, and that means we go to bed at midnight and stuff like that. That's quite unusual in terms of evolution.
No, I'm very comfortable, bed by 9, up at 6 or 7. That'll be my ideal day.
Yeah, it's lovely.
I'm beginning to get towards that now, definitely. I used to think the complete opposite.
Now that the show's recorded on a Tuesday afternoon, I do the whole week's worth. We can do that now. I'll be fast asleep by the time you actually listen to this. 0207 224 2000 is on. We are live here, of course. Mel hosting the off-air phone, and as always, interesting tale, interesting story. How clever with your diet are you when it comes to things like saturated fat?
I think. I mean, occasionally I'll eat some French fries. You call them chips here?
Well, no, chips and French fries are very different.
No. Oh, well, in New Zealand we call them chips, crisps. We call them chips.
Ah, yeah,
and we call the other ones chips as well because we like it's easy. Just call everything chips. But occasionally I eat that kind of thing. But generally, my general diet, I cook most of my food. I always have. I lived a long time in Japan, 12 years, so I had adopted a lot of their eating style, which is eating lots of different things and steaming generally and putting a sauce on them. And I don't eat meat or fish, and I haven't done for years. But I think I don't eat much in the way of saturated fats. But I love fried food, but I try not to eat it. I absolutely love it, but I don't eat meat.
I had some devastating news regarding that not long ago, and they were saying that even your wonderfully extra virgin olive oil, if you cook it too much, can still be as bad as any of the other oil. And there's something else which is very confusing, talking of things being at odds. Tomatoes, if you want to get the best out of tomatoes, don't eat them raw. You got to cook them to get the best nutrients out of tomatoes.
Oh, why? I didn't know this. Why is this?
I will dig it out while we talk about the next subject because I don't want to give out half of information.
With carrots, certainly. Cook carrots and add a little whatever fat you use, a little butter or a little oil, because that way you get the vitamin A out of it.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. No,
yes, they're a little bit better.
I need
steamed.
To do. Okay.
Jamie. I knew that when the Independent... Oh, let me just go to a couple of calls if we can before we do that any further. But we're going next to the story. Yeah, the Doom, yeah. Anita is in Sutton before we get to the Doom. Evening to Anita. Pop your headphones on, DJ. Evening, my love. I'm only saying that, DJ, you missed that. Anita always calls me Honey Bunny, so I feel that I can call her darling or my love or something nice. Childcare. We started the hour with it.
Yeah, I know, but you see, I don't believe in any child under 3 going to a nursery. I do believe them being, socialising with the parent and going to, a class with other mothers and their toddlers so that they mix and socialise. But I don't believe in you handing them over as some mothers do.
So who should stay at home?
No, I mean, all mothers for 3 years, if you have a child, you've got to look after it. And,
what about the fathers?
Well, the thing is, in the animal kingdom, I mean, for goodness sake, they look after their young. I mean,
the animal kingdom, and there's no connection between us and the animal kingdom.
But no, we are superior to them. But look at how they look after their young. I mean, we are a disgrace. It's absolute disgrace.
Well, also, don't forget, though, their young are on their feet and looking after themselves within about 6 to 10 months sometimes.
No, I mean,
yes.
Look at the lion, the female lion, how she looks after her young and teaches them,
how much rent does she have to pay?
But no, the thing
but there is, you can't compare a lioness with us.
Well, of course you can. We are superior too, and we should be better than. I mean, it's still so. But historically, as far as you're concerned, that's the best way. That the mum stays at home, and the father goes to work and brings back the money. Absolutely.
And what happens when that doesn't always work? Father tragically dies, or the relationship splits up.
Has to. The mother still has to. The mother, you have a child, and that is your bond for 3 years, and that child needs you.
So who looks after you? Who supports you?
Well, you still get by. Do you know what I mean?
Well, how? On what? On love?
Well, you do. No, you do get by. I mean, the amount of benefits this country has. I mean, in my day, there was none. Do you know what I mean? And the amount of benefits they get nowadays, and yet they moan. I just cannot believe it.
Well, they encapsulates an awful lot of people, but I just wonder, when you say that the situation of the mum is the one, why not the dad?
Well, and the dad, obviously. Oh. Yes, absolutely. But the child needs its parents. For those first 3 years, it is vital for the bonding, for their stability, and, to show them that they will look to the parents to say, is this dangerous? Shouldn't I do this or do that? And I mean, it's vital. I mean,
what about the expression, it takes a village to bring up a child? Why does it always have to be just the parents? What about grandma, granddad?
Oh, well, yes.
Great-grandma, great-granddad?
I have looked after my grandchildren, but
so then mum and dad can go out to work, can't they? And then some other in the family can look after them.
Yes, but the grandma's love, as in the difference between a nursery that has, 20 children, they're not getting the one-to-one which a child needs. They really do need it. And they will look to whoever is looking after them for assurances, to give them confidence. It's so important.
All right, Anita, thank you for the call, and we'll get more reaction, I know, after midnight on that, 0207 224 2000. Anita put off the discussion of doom by some time, but we can't put the subject off forever, Jamie. This is from the front. This is on The Independent, and I knew that when I saw a subject which says official prophecy of doom, one of you may pick it up, but I knew it wouldn't be you, DJ. I knew it would be you. Tell us the story.
Global warming will cause widespread conflict, displace millions of people and devastate the global economy. So that's the headline. So what it is as people will know, I imagine, the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So that's the definitive report about what is happening with climate change and what the realities of it are and what we can expect. And there's been it's a leak, but I mean it's going to come out in a couple of weeks' time anyway. This report, so it's the latest report, and this article in the Independent, outlines how serious and severe climate change is going to be. Now there is I don't want to kind of go down the normal road of doom and gloom, because what we find is there's a lot of psychological research into this. People will quickly just block their ears and brains because they don't want to hear it. So I'm going to try another approach tonight. There is a positive side to this. What's happening is that people are beginning to stop being obsessed with their own well-being and their own kind of small circle that they dwell within, and they're only beginning to start talking about what kind of legacy are we leaving for our younger generations. And climate change is one of the main impetuses for this dialogue. Never underestimate the fact that the human species is totally capable of creating and inventing brilliant solutions. Sadly, for the past 50 corporate-led years, all our geniuses have generally been bought and their genius has been used to make money for corporations. There's no reason why that genius and sense of innovation can't be actually diverted towards creating realistic solutions for a sustainable future for our younger generations. And that's the dialogue I think is really important. I mean, to pray, Steve, for the sake of your readers, these are kind of areas that we're going to be looking at, coastal systems and low-lying areas. So in other words, much, much more floods. Food security, there's going to be a real problem with food security across the whole world. The global economy is going to be affected, of course, by climate change. Human health, all kinds of human health situations. Human security, because there's going to be millions of people migrating because of climate change problems. Freshwater resources, we'll be running out of fresh water. And unique landscapes also are threatened. So those are the different headings that this really comprehensive report has. Now,
haven't we cut down hugely on the amount of resources that we're using and that we're possibly polluting? We have changed hugely in the last 50 years. What more can we do? Cold in winter, starve in summer? What would you like us to do?
With resources, it's really interesting. I mean, the issue of the New Internationalist that's out at the moment is actually about resources and commodities. What we've actually been doing is holding the majority world, so when I say the majority world, that's the sort of southern hemisphere, or what you might call the developing south, holding them to ransom. We've actually continued with imperialism quite happily. In other words, we've been controlling the trade markets ourselves. So we are absolutely stealing all their raw materials at prices that we control, so they never really have an opportunity to make any money out of these raw materials. And the real money is when you process the raw materials, which is what we do in our own countries. And there's been a totally unfair deal going on. There's a fantastic photograph which is in this current issue of the New Internationalist where Hugo Chavez, when he has a meeting with President Obama, is holding his hand and then passing him this book, and it's a very, very famous book that describes exactly what I've been saying, how the industrialised North have held the rest of the world to ransom, continually milk them of all their resources without giving any kind of payment back, any opportunity for them to develop, being able to control their governments very easily and to have this corporate influence all over these countries. So actually there's been a really unfair deal that's going on, and now we've got a situation where we're having wars for the last resources. Anyone who thinks that, the wars in Iraq were because of, the human rights abuses by Saddam Hussein, have to ask themselves the question, well, why didn't we go into Malaysia, Indonesia?
Because we can't go into every country where there is trouble and unrest.
Well, you could say that, but also you might suggest, well, the Suharto who was in charge of Malaysia was actually making a lot of business for us, so we were actually quite happy to allow him to continue to be responsible for murder of 280,000 of his own people, whereas Saddam was beginning to not want to do business with us, so suddenly we picked up on his human rights and not Suharto's.
Okay, we're moving slightly away from the global warming aspect here, but I understand the point. What do you make of this, DJ? I mean, there is this idea that we are, as human beings, the evil ones in the planet, but there is also a view that the way that the planet plays out is the way that it was always going to play out.
I don't agree with the way that the planet. I do think that we as human beings have a remarkable impact on how the planet is in its health. I do think that. Just to add to Jamie, what you haven't mentioned in your summing up of the way the West basically is still an imperial power, the use of aid to support governments that are basically dictators, and that use of what they call aid, which was actually will always have strings attached, makes a country indebted, but that money is used by corrupt governments to keep that small percentage of the power elite in charge. So it's the system that supports itself, and then suddenly they get too cheeky, and then they have to be topped off, and it goes like that. Anyway, that was another thing. Yes, I think what I think is, just at the human level, we as human beings generally, unless people are grow up with a sense of responsibility, which when I grew up not to throw litter on the ground, for example. And if you're not brought up to not make that connection that you are responsible for what the litter on the ground, then I think an education, then there has to almost be, you almost have to control people. Like if there's going to be recycling, if people aren't going to take responsibility, then they've got to, unfortunately, there's got to be a system which either rewards people who do it properly, and I don't like the word punish, but the
carrot and the stick.
Yes.
Although the argument some have over recycling is the power and the resources that are used over recycling actually is far worse than the remanufacture of what you've just thrown away.
Yes, but on the other hand, you think so?
No, I'm saying some people will say that the use of the resources. So, for example, if you then recycle a toaster, you melt down the plastic, you melt down the metal, you're then putting whatever you're putting out into the environment, and then you've made something else with it. But then is that not worse than? We don't know. None of us are scientists.
But I think you'll always have people who will undermine an argument that is going to be, that they'll undermine it with that kind of argument. And I do think recycling is a good thing, and I think we should all do it. And a guy came to my door today, and it was great. He told me about it.
Without wanting to, I'm trying to think of another expression than stuff that is rude. But I'm just thinking this is a drop in the ocean is better than what I was thinking.
Yeah.
This is a drop in the ocean, because if you think about what we produce as a world, technologically, the power that is always on, aeroplane flight, central heating, etc.
Yeah,
that's where we start. Sure, not with recycling.
Absolutely, I agree totally. So it's actually one of the main things, because obviously there's a lot of campaigning going on about climate change at the moment. There's a brilliant event tomorrow, and Vivienne Westwood's very much involved in what we're doing. It's worth looking at talkfracking.org or Frack Off London, which is tomorrow. But energy reduction is something that people need to start talking about now. And generally people go, well, what do you want to do? Like live in a cave around a candle? It's not necessarily that at all. People have to, we're addressing fracking tomorrow, and it's a really important issue in this country. We cannot continue to take fossil fuels out of the ground, whatever way we do it, but doing it in that way is insane. People go, okay, well, energy reduction, does that mean that I have to kind of turn all the lights off? Think about this. 250,000 people would be employed immediately if this government decided to give proper insulation to all the buildings in this country. 250,000 employed immediately for years. There's a house up in kind of a test house up in North England. They heat it. Their heating bill for a whole year was 20 quid because it's this new form of insulation. So there already is the technology to do this. But you have to see what we're up against. You know, I'm not a nutter. So many people have looked at what I'm talking about, and so many people say the same thing. There is an incredible lobbying power within government by the fossil fuel corporations. There is no way that they are going to be keen on a government that starts putting political will behind developing renewables and sustainables, because once we've done that properly, and Goddess willing we will do before we burn ourselves to a crisp, once we've done that properly, they can't own the wind and they can't own the sun. They can't own the waves. If you want to nail the biggest problem, it's an economic model based on infinite growth, but it's relying on finite resources. That is the work of idiots, and we have to move through that.
We're going to leave it there because we're out of time, but also obviously give listeners a chance to react to what you said. For those who've never heard the programme before and have said, why on earth are you allowing him to speak about fracking without balancing it up? We've done it, we've been there, we limit him to 45 seconds when he comes in talking about fracking. So we'll, I'm sure, deal with that another night. DJ, before you go,
yes.
You've got a couple of books out. One is going to be turned into a movie. Just give us a brief summary.
One book is called Julian Corkle is a Filthy Liar, and it's being made into a film. And the second book is called Sherry Crack Gets Normal. They're published by Blue Door HarperCollins.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
When's the movie? Still
I hope soon, I hope.
Me too. And Jamie, you, as we were saying earlier on, contributed for New Internationalist magazine. Next issue?
Next issue is an absolute corker. It's going to be about whistleblowers, right from the psychology of whistleblowers, what kind of people it takes to do it, to the actual reality of how it's playing out across the world. It's wonderful research that's gone into it. The kind of Twitter for me is at Jamie Kelsey-Fry. The Twitter for New Internationalist is at New Int. And the Twitter for tomorrow, the action tomorrow, which is the Fracked Future Carnival, is hashtag M19 or at Frack Off London or at Talk Fracking. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you very much
Wonderful.
for that. Cheers, buddy.
No, it's my pleasure. Probably my last programme giving you so much space without anyone coming to its defence. We will, though, put that right. 0207 224 2000 is the number. Many thanks to Jamie Kelsey-Fry and DJ Connell for joining us live on the programme tonight. It is Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9 and Valley Fontaine at 1 minute to midnight.